The trophy wife's tectonic shift. Like this video right now, if you think money can buy happiness, seriously, hit that like button and let's see. Eleanor Vance felt the controlled grip of Julian Blackwood's fingers tighten on her wrist as they swept through the gilded lobby of the Mandarin Oriental in New York City. The marble floors mirrored the crystal lights, and dozens of gazes from Manhattan's elite were already fixed on them. "Don't embarrass me," Julian whispered through a forced smile aimed at the photographers. Those 3 words pierced her chest like shrapnel. For 7 years, she'd been the perfect wife, the brilliant urban planner who had shelved her own career to build his fintech empire. She molded every detail of her life to fit Julian's vision. But tonight, at the year's most significant charity gala, something inside her cracked. In less than 2 hours, that ballroom would witness not her humiliation, but her rebirth. And Julian would discover that the woman he tried to erase had been meticulously saving much more than he imagined. Subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the moment Eleanor takes back her life. Chapter 1. The Accessory. Eleanor adjusted the silk fabric of her designer gown for the 10th time, waiting for Julian to finish yet another business call in the private elevator heading to the penthouse ballroom. "Confirm this with Damien before midnight," Julian ordered into the phone, then disconnected without a goodbye. His eyes finally landed on Eleanor, assessing her with the familiar look she'd learned to dread. "Hair's fine," he granted. "But smile more. You always look so serious." Eleanor forced her lips into a curve. She was serious. She'd graduated top of her class from Columbia's Graduate School of Architecture, designing 3 sustainable housing projects that won international acclaim before she turned 30. But Julian never mentioned that. To his world, Eleanor was simply Julian Blackwood's wife. As they entered the opulent ballroom, surrounded by baccarat chandeliers and views of the glittering Manhattan skyline, Eleanor's presence became purely decorative. Julian instantly plunged into conversation with a French investor, Thierry Delacroix, about quarterly rounds and acquisitions. Eleanor attempted to contribute once, mentioning an article on urban infrastructure. Julian cut her off in front of everyone, chuckling, "Leave the business to the men who understand it, darling." She never tried again. "I'll get a drink," Eleanor murmured. But Julian didn't register it. At the bar, she was suddenly interrupted. "Eleanor Vance." She turned to see Chloe Navarro, a former classmate. "Chloe, God, how long has it been? 7 years?" "At least," Chloe replied, her expression intelligent and warm. "I followed your work. The Riverside Eco Units project was revolutionary." Eleanor felt a genuine flush of warmth. Someone remembered. "And you? What are you working on now?" Chloe asked directly. The simple question hit Eleanor like a physical blow. "I'm on a break." "A break? An architect of your caliber? You had offers in London, Paris. What happened?" Before Eleanor could answer, Julian materialized beside her, his hand heavy on her shoulder. "Chloe Navarro, Julian Blackwood, Eleanor's husband." "Ah, yes, Eleanor was very talented," Julian interjected, using the past tense that cut Eleanor to the core. "But now she's dedicated to supporting my career. It's a partnership, you see. I focus on business. She handles everything else." He squeezed her shoulder, a gesture of forced affection. Chloe looked at Eleanor with a mix of pity and clarity. She pulled a card from her clutch. "Eleanor, if you ever want to get back into architecture, call me. We're always looking for talent." She held Eleanor's hand a second longer, a silent message of solidarity passing between them. Chapter 2. The Public Declaration. Once Chloe was gone, Julian sighed irritably. "You don't need to keep bringing up your old career. It makes it look like you're unhappy with me." "I didn't bring it up. She asked," Eleanor snapped, the raw anger surprising her. "Well, learn to deflect. Say you're busy with charity work, decorating, whatever." Julian looked around to ensure they weren't heard. Remember what I said in the elevator? Don't embarrass me. Let's get back. Smile for the right people. Eleanor followed, but her fingers crushed Chloe's card in her palm. The conversation had cracked the surface she'd built around herself. When did supporting him turn into disappearing completely? At 10 p.m., the moderator announced a special session on the future of sustainable architecture. Eleanor's heart hammered when she saw Chloe was a panelist. Eleanor feigned a trip to the restroom and positioned herself where she could see the stage. Chloe spoke with the confidence Eleanor used to possess. When the Q&A opened, Eleanor's feet moved before her brain processed. She raised her hand. "Yes, ma'am." The entire room turned. Julian was staring at her, his expression a silent scream of alert. "Chloe," Eleanor began, her voice trembling, but holding firm. "You mentioned the biggest barrier to these projects is cultural resistance. But what if the problem isn't just external resistance, but internal self-sabotage? How many talented architects do we lose because society, or even their own families, convince them they must choose between career and other priorities?" Chloe looked directly at Eleanor, a powerful acknowledgement passing between them. "That is perhaps the most important question of the night." She spoke about the need to create systems that don't force anyone to choose, systems that celebrate excellence without demanding a sacrifice of identity. The room went silent. Then, one person began to clap, then another. Soon, the audience erupted in applause. Chapter 3. The Cage and the Key. As the session ended, Julian was instantly beside her, face red with contained fury. "What in God's name was that? You made a scene in front of everyone. That was clearly about us." "It was a question about architecture," Eleanor countered, though her voice didn't even convince herself. "It was public shame. We're leaving, now." Julian grabbed her arm and dragged her toward the exit. In that moment, being physically dragged through the glittering hall, Eleanor realized something crystalline and terrifying. She didn't want to go. She didn't want to follow. She didn't want to obey. The car ride was silent, a pregnant pause before the storm. Once inside their minimalist penthouse overlooking Central Park, Julian slammed his keys onto the entry table. "Explain what possessed you tonight," he demanded, his eyes hard. "You never encouraged me to go back," Eleanor whispered. "You just assumed I was happy to disappear," Julian scoffed. "Disappear? You live in $1 million apartment. I gave you a life most women would kill for, and you have the audacity to complain about identity. I need a supportive partner, not someone dwelling on a past that's irrelevant." "I wasn't dwelling, I was silenced," Eleanor cried, years of resentment surfacing like lava. "You just don't offer anything else," Julian shot back. "When was the last time you did anything productive? All I see is someone who quit and wants to blame me." Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs. "He thinks I quit." "I didn't quit," she whispered. "I was told my ambition was a threat to your image. I was told to be smaller." Julian rolled his eyes. "Drama. I have work. I'm sleeping in the office." He retreated, slamming the door. Eleanor stood trembling in the empty, cold living room. She walked to the window and stared at the relentless, shimmering city. Where had that ambitious woman gone? At 5 a.m., as the sky began to lighten, she made a decision. She found Chloe's card and sent a message. "Chloe, thank you for the talk last night. You said to call if I wanted to return to architecture. Is that still true?" A reply came almost instantly. "Always true." "Coffee at 9 a.m., the Ivy in Chelsea." "Be there." "I will be there," Eleanor typed back. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. What should Eleanor's first major project be? A park, a tower, or an affordable housing project? Chapter 4. The Path to Autonomy. Eleanor arrived at the Ivy, nervous but resolute. Chloe was waiting. "You came," Chloe smiled. "Part of me thought you'd back out." "Part of me did too," Eleanor admitted. Chloe got straight to the point. "What happened? You were brilliant. Was it because of him? He didn't stop me, but he never encouraged me, Eleanor confessed, her throat tight. I put my career on hold, thinking it was temporary. But every year, it became harder to justify going back. I believed it was too late. Eleanor, you're 30. Architects work until they're 80. You lost nothing. You only paused, Chloe stated firmly. Your husband is wrong. Talent doesn't disappear. Chloe presented an idea, an international competition to redesign a public square in Boston. It doesn't pay much, but it's massive visibility. You can submit a design. Eleanor looked at the sketches, feeling an old, deep fire flicker to life. I don't know if I can do it. You can, Chloe insisted, taking her hand. But you have to decide if you truly want this. It will be hard. He will resist. Society will question you. You have to be sure. Eleanor thought of Julian sleeping in his office, of the 7 years she spent shrinking herself. I want to come back. Chapter 5. Choosing dignity. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Eleanor worked in secret, using Julian's frequent business trips to Hong Kong and London to sketch, build models, and immerse herself in sustainable design again. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and completely her own. The night she submitted her design, a project called Urban Roots, focused on integrated nature and community spaces, Julian returned late. Productive trip, Julian said, grabbing water. And you? Still playing with architecture? I've submitted a design to a competition, Eleanor said, her voice shaking slightly, but holding firm. Julian's expression went from indifference to irritation. Architecture again? Eleanor, you're a bit old to be chasing hobbies. If you're bored, find some useful volunteer work. Architecture isn't a hobby. It was my profession, and it can be again, she retorted. No serious firm will hire you. You've been out for 7 years. You need to be realistic, Julian sneered. Eleanor felt the full, devastating force of his contempt. I am realistic enough to know I wasted 7 years trying to be the perfect wife for someone who doesn't even notice I exist. Julian crossed his arms. If you try and fail publicly, it reflects on me. You're my wife. Everything you do affects my reputation. The truth was laid bare. She was merely an extension of his brand, a threat to his image. I'm presenting, Julian, she said, calm and resolute, with or without your support. Julian laughed, a short, cutting sound. Then you've made your choice. You're choosing your ego over our marriage. Don't come crying to me when it inevitably blows up in your face. I don't need you to clean up anything. I'm an adult. I can fail alone, Eleanor declared. And I don't need your approval. I only need to believe in myself. She left the kitchen, locked herself in the guest room, and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of liberation. She had finally chosen herself. Chapter 6. The Unstoppable Ascent. 2 weeks later, the email arrived. Dear Eleanor Vance, your project, Urban Roots, has been selected as one of the 5 finalists. Eleanor screamed with euphoria. She was a finalist. Her project was chosen out of hundreds. She burst into Julian's home office, where he was on a video call. I need to tell you something. Now. He grudgingly muted his mic. What is it? I'm a finalist in this competition. My presentation is in 2 weeks. She expected pride. She got irritation. When is the presentation? He asked flatly. The same day as your company gala. You need to be there. Julian cut her off, standing up. My wife needs to be by my side. It's part of the image we're building. This is my chance to come back to architecture. You can go alone. If you don't win, it will be a public humiliation, he said, impatient. Be realistic. Do you really think a woman out of the game for 7 years has a chance against active professionals? Eleanor felt a fierce, burning certainty. Yes, she replied, looking straight into his eyes. I think I have a chance. And even if I don't win, I'm still presenting. Because this isn't about winning. It's about coming back. Julian's face twisted into fury. You are making a mistake. You are choosing your ego over our marriage. I will not be by your side when this happens." "Then don't be," Eleanor said calmly. "I don't need you. I just needed you to believe in me. Since that's too much to ask, I'll believe in myself." She walked out of the office, invisible to her own husband, but brutally and liberatingly aware. He wasn't blind. He simply refused to see. And her only path now was to stop asking for permission to exist. Chapter 7. The True Victory. The day of the presentation arrived. Eleanor stood on stage at the Avery Hall in Lincoln Center. 300 pairs of eyes were fixed on her. 300 people waited to see if she would be brilliant or mediocre. She began. "My name is Eleanor Vance, and for 7 years I was invisible." Her voice was firm. She guided the audience through her Urban Roots project, integrating rainwater harvesting, native vegetation, and community spaces. She wasn't just presenting a design. She was showcasing 7 years of pent-up passion. Urban Roots isn't just about sustainability, she concluded. It's about belonging. It's about creating structures where people feel safe to be who they are. The auditorium erupted in a standing ovation. Eleanor was paralyzed by the applause. She had done it. The jury returned. The Japanese architect leading the panel announced, "The winning project is Urban Roots by Eleanor Vance." The room exploded. Chloe screamed and embraced Eleanor. Eleanor stood on stage, holding the certificate and a substantial research grant, feeling 7 years of pain, silence, and invisibility disintegrate. She was not invisible. She never was. Meanwhile, across town, Julian was at his gala, smiling and building his empire. He didn't know it yet, but Eleanor's name was already trending. The next morning, Eleanor woke up to 243 notifications. Headlines screamed, "Architect returns after 7-year hiatus and sweeps international competition." She saw 42 missed calls from Julian, and a text. "We need to talk. Urgent." Eleanor took a sip of coffee. Urgent. Now that she'd won without him, it was urgent. At 10 a.m., Julian burst into the apartment, his gala shirt wrinkled. "You turned off your phone. You're in every paper. People are asking if I was holding you back." Eleanor looked at him calmly. "And are you not the villain?" "I tried to protect you from failure," he insisted. "But I didn't fail. I won. And now you're angry, not because I lost, but because I won without you," Eleanor stated, her voice steady. "You wanted to keep me small so you could shine brighter. But I'm shining now, and you can't handle it." She walked to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and began packing. "I'm staying at Chloe's for a few days. We need space." Julian watched, paralyzed by fear. "You'll regret this," he said. "No, Julian," Eleanor replied, closing the zipper with a definitive sound. "My only regret is not doing this years ago." She walked past him, a free woman, leaving the golden cage behind. "Thank you for witnessing Eleanor's story. If this story inspires you, please share it with someone who needs a reminder that they are their own greatest project." Chapter 8. The final negotiation. Like this video. If you believe self-worth is the best kind of wealth, the weeks following Eleanor's dramatic exit were a whirlwind of media attention and legal paperwork. Her project, Urban Roots, was breaking ground, and her name was in every major design journal. Julian, meanwhile, saw his reputation take a hit. Investors, already wary of his instability, disliked the villain husband narrative. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Eleanor took only what she needed and refused any substantial alimony. She wanted no financial strings attached to her past life. One evening, at a high-profile industry mixer in Soho, Eleanor was approached by Julian. He was alone, looking older, his arrogance replaced by a strained desperation. "Eleanor," Julian said, his voice quiet. He didn't try to charm or command. "I just wanted to say, congratulations. The success of Urban Roots is undeniable. Eleanor met his gaze, feeling nothing but cool indifference. Thank you, Julian. I came here tonight hoping you'd consider this a fresh start, he continued, eyes scanning the room nervously. I realize now I was wrong. I was controlling. But I've changed. My business, my perspective. It's shifted. We could be a power couple now, Eleanor. I could support your work on a global scale. He was offering her the old dream, the one where she stood next to him, but now with a better title. Eleanor smiled, genuinely, but with finality. Julian, you're looking at the woman you tried to erase, the woman you told would be humiliated. You don't get to claim credit for the architecture I built without you. She leaned in, her voice calm. You didn't change, Julian. You saw my success and wanted to reacquire it. And the problem is I'm no longer for sale. She walked away. The ghost of her marriage finally laid to rest. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. What did Eleanor gain by refusing Julian's final offer? Money, status, or genuine freedom? Chapter 9. The Blueprint for Partnership. Eleanor plunged into her work, traveling between New York, London, and her new major project in Vancouver. Her life was defined by purpose, but she was careful not to replace the tyranny of a demanding husband with the tyranny of a demanding career. She made time for quiet evenings, for Chloe, and for genuine connection. It was during a collaborative meeting on sustainable timber resources in Vancouver that she met Ethan Cole, an environmental engineer. Ethan was everything Julian was not: thoughtful, patient, and deeply passionate about building things right, not just big. He didn't interrupt. When Eleanor spoke, he listened, often following up with insightful questions that showed he respected her expertise. Their collaboration quickly evolved into shared dinners and long conversations about life, not just blueprints. One evening, they were reviewing a complex structural challenge. Ethan glanced at Eleanor's intense focus and smiled. You love this, don't you? He asked. I do, Eleanor admitted. I love the complexity, the problem-solving. I love knowing that what I design will improve the lives of thousands of people. It's incredible to watch you work, Ethan said, his admiration evident. You have that rare ability to see both the smallest detail and the entire city skyline at once. You're unstoppable. Eleanor felt a warmth she hadn't realized she missed. Ethan wasn't praising her appearance or her status. He was celebrating her competence. He saw her as an equal, a partner in creation. Their first date wasn't a fancy gala. It was a hike up a mountain to study the watershed for a new development project. They talked about their pasts, Eleanor sharing the painful reality of her marriage, Ethan sharing his dedication to work-life balance. I won't ever ask you to choose between your career and our life, Ethan promised, looking her directly in the eye. I want to be a structural support, not a wall. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for more stories about love and true partnership. Final chapter. The New Architecture of Happiness. 3 years later, Eleanor Vance stood on the stage of the World Sustainable Architecture Summit in Stockholm. She was not only receiving the Architect of the Year award, the highest honor in her field, but she was delivering the keynote speech. The audience, 1,000 strong, hung on her every word. Julian was nowhere to be seen, his presence no longer a consideration in her world. Eleanor concluded her speech, looking at the bright, hopeful faces in the crowd. We, as architects, understand foundations. We know that a structure built on a weak, uneven base, like the expectation of pleasing others, will eventually crack. But when I finally had the courage to tear down the walls of my old life, I discovered my own unshakable foundation: autonomy, integrity, and purpose. My greatest achievement is not the towers I design, but the life I rebuilt, brick by choice. And I learned that the most profound partnerships are not about completing each other, but about supporting each other's inherent greatness. As the audience gave her a thunderous standing ovation, Eleanor locked eyes with Ethan, who was beaming proudly in the front row. He wasn't applauding her for being his wife. He was applauding Eleanor Vance, the visionary. She had returned home, not to a golden cage, but to herself. Eleanor had proven that it's never too late to reclaim your space, your voice, and your magnificent, well-deserved brilliance. Thank you for following Eleanor's story of monumental self-reconstruction. Share this video with someone who needs the courage to build their own world. Chapter 10. The collaborative canvas like this video. If you agree that the best partnerships are built on equal talent and respect. 3 years into her new life, Eleanor Vance was not just an architect. She was a global figurehead for conscious design. Her firm, now named Vance & Associates, specialized in urban renewal that prioritized people and sustainability over profit margins. Her latest commission was her most ambitious yet, designing a zero-emissions community hub in the heart of a revitalized industrial district in Chicago. The unique challenge: she insisted on bringing in a lead engineer who understood the ethical implications of every material choice. Ethan Cole. Working with Ethan was a revelation. There was no territorial ego, no subtle dismissal of her ideas. When they disagreed on structural load-bearing materials, it wasn't a fight for dominance. It was a collaborative pursuit of the best solution. One afternoon, reviewing blueprints laid in their makeshift studio, Eleanor felt a familiar wave of stress. She realized she was pushing Ethan too hard, trying to micromanage every minute detail. Ethan paused, noticing the tension in her jaw. He gently took the pencil from her hand. "Eleanor, breathe," he said. "We have the best design. We have the best team. What's the real stressor?" She sighed. "I keep feeling like if I don't control every variable, it will collapse. I'm afraid that if this project isn't perfect, the world, or worse, Julian, will say I only won because he isn't around to manage my chaos." Ethan looked at her with profound understanding, recognizing the ghost of the golden cage still lingering. "Eleanor," he said, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Julian's metrics are irrelevant. His approval is noise. The success of this project won't be measured by the initial headlines, but by the community that thrives in it 20 years from now. And our partnership is not defined by perfection. It's defined by trust." He was offering her structural support, not control. Viewer question: what is the most significant difference Eleanor has learned about partnership with Ethan compared to her marriage with Julian? Trust, respect for career, or shared values? Chapter 11. The new definition of success. Eleanor and Ethan redefined their approach to the project. They instituted a no micromanagement Monday rule, forcing Eleanor to delegate and trust her team. She learned to embrace the unexpected deviations, the structural engineer's spontaneous idea, the community's demand for more natural light. The construction phase became a testament to Eleanor's healing. Julian, hearing about the project's buzz, even tried to sneak his way back into her professional orbit. He sent an email to the project's main investor, subtly questioning Eleanor's financial realism and offering to provide his expertise to manage the budget, a clear attempt to regain control through finance. Eleanor didn't panic. She didn't rage. She simply forwarded the email to Ethan and their lead investor, Mrs. Lena Chen, a formidable woman in her 70s, who had championed Eleanor's vision. Mrs. Chen's response was legendary. "Mr. Blackwood's expertise in sustainable community building is noted, but his expertise in emotional self-destruction is frankly better documented. We trust Ms. Vance implicitly." Eleanor laughed, a clear, joyous sound. Julian was officially neutralized. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to see more moments of powerful women shutting down toxic masculinity. Final chapter. The enduring structure. 2 years later, The Zero Emissions Community Hub was complete. It was a masterpiece, a fusion of nature and cutting-edge technology, with green roofs, solar panels, and community spaces that were always filled with life. At the grand opening, Mayor of Chicago spoke about Eleanor's vision. Ethan stood proudly beside her, holding her hand, his presence a silent affirmation of their equality. Eleanor stepped up to the microphone, her eyes sweeping over the thriving crowd. 7 years ago, I thought success meant having the biggest title and the most money. I thought architecture was about building structures that touched the sky. Today, I know better. True success is about building a foundation that can withstand any storm. And the most valuable structure I have ever built is not this beautiful hub, but the life I share with the man beside me, a man who never asked me to be less than I am. She looked at Ethan, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for showing me that a real partnership isn't about one person shining, but about two people creating a light so bright it illuminates the entire city. Eleanor Vance had achieved her ultimate victory. She had traded the isolation of wealth for the richness of connection, the tyranny of control for the freedom of trust. Her life was an enduring monument to resilience, built brick by deliberate, courageous choice. Thank you for following Eleanor's journey. If this story inspires you, please share it with someone who needs a reminder that they are the architect of their own destiny. Chapter 13. The vows of partnership, like this video. If you believe a healthy relationship means equal footing, always. Eleanor Vance and Ethan Cole's wedding wasn't a spectacle for the society pages, but a profound commitment to equality. They held a simple outdoor ceremony overlooking the Hudson River, attended only by close friends like Chloe Navarro and family. Eleanor walked down the aisle, not in a gown of opulence, but in a dress she had personally designed. Elegant, strong, and entirely her own. She didn't need to be given away. She was walking toward her partner. In their vows, they didn't promise to complete each other, but to support each other's fullest potential. Ethan's vow was particularly moving. Eleanor, I promise to be the structural engineer who always reinforces your foundations, never the architect who tells you where your walls must stand. Their marriage, however, presented a new challenge: the power couple effect. As their individual stars rose, they became a visible entity in the media. The Vance-Cole duo. Reporters constantly framed their work as a competition, or questioned Ethan about being married to the architect of the decade. Ethan, ever secure, simply navigated it with grace. Once, during a joint interview, a journalist asked, "Mr. Cole, how do you handle your wife's success overshadowing your own?" Ethan smiled. "I don't. Eleanor's light doesn't diminish mine. It illuminates the entire room. We are in the business of building better cities, and she's the best at that. I'm proud to provide the engineering brilliance to ensure her visions stand tall." Eleanor realized that the true test of their love wasn't surviving hardship, but sharing the spotlight without ego. Viewer question: what unique tradition do you think Eleanor and Ethan should establish to ensure they always maintain professional and personal equality? A weekly project review, a monthly no-work date night, or alternating lead roles on projects? Chapter 14. Designing a future. As their professional partnership flourished, Eleanor and Ethan decided to start a family. This presented Eleanor with the ultimate fear: reliving her past self-erasure. She was terrified of becoming the woman who sacrificed her identity again. She feared stepping away from the drafting table, even temporarily. Ethan saw her anxiety and approached it with the same thoughtfulness he applied to a complex urban plan. "You won't be taking a break, Eleanor," Ethan assured her. "You'll be leading the most important project feasibility study of your life, and we'll staff the project equally." They restructured their firm and their life. Ethan took the primary role in project oversight for a year, while Eleanor focused on design concepts from home and on her writing. They hired a shared assistant, whose role was split equally between the home and the firm. Reinforcing that family was their joint venture. When their daughter, Clara, was born, Eleanor felt a wave of love that was overwhelming, but she also felt the familiar pull of ambition. She missed the intensity of the design process. Ethan gently encouraged her. "Clara needs a fulfilled mother, Eleanor, not a sacrificed one. Your creativity is part of who you are. We'll find a way." But he set up a sunlit studio in their home with a crib nearby, ensuring her work could integrate, not compete, with her new motherhood. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to see how Eleanor tackles the biggest design challenge yet. Motherhood. Final chapter. The enduring legacy. 3 years later, Eleanor stood on the top of her latest critically acclaimed skyscraper in London, which was entirely clad in sustainable materials. Clara, a bubbly, intelligent toddler, was sitting happily in a structured carrier on Ethan's back. Eleanor was discussing the final aesthetic touches with her site manager, fully engaged and present. She looked at Ethan and Clara. She had designed an empire of glass and steel, but her greatest design was the life she was living, a partnership built on mutual celebration rather than competition, a career that flourished because she had a partner who valued her full potential, a family where identity was cherished, not erased. Eleanor realized her triumph wasn't just about winning awards, it was about breaking the cycle. She was a mother who was fully present in her daughter's life and fully present in her work, a perfect integration that the old Eleanor had been told was impossible. She looked at Ethan, who smiled, a smile that was proud, supportive, and entirely free of ego. "We built something better, didn't we?" Eleanor whispered. "The best foundation there is," Ethan agreed, nodding toward Clara. Eleanor Vance had finally proven that a woman does not have to be smaller to be loved. She only needs the courage to choose a partner who dares to shine just as brightly beside her. Thank you for following Eleanor's powerful journey. Share this video with a partner who believes in building a shared legacy. Chapter 15. The uninvited ghost. Like this video if you agree that the best revenge is living well. 4 years after the divorce, Eleanor Vance was a name synonymous with visionary design. She was busy balancing motherhood, global projects, and her best-selling book. The past was exactly where it belonged. The past. But the world of high finance and high design often intersects. Eleanor was delivering the closing keynote address at the Global Infrastructure Summit in London, a massive, high-profile event. She spoke about building resilient cities and subtly about building resilient selves. Her lecture was flawless, met with a standing ovation. At the champagne reception afterward, Eleanor was basking in the shared success with Ethan and Chloe, who had flown in for the event. Ethan was holding a now 3-year-old Clara, who was busy critiquing the structural integrity of a canopy tower. Suddenly, a familiar, smooth voice cut through the professional din. "Eleanor, it's impressive, truly." Julian Blackwood stood before them. He looked older, slightly heavier, and his tailored suit seemed unable to conceal a certain restless anxiety. He was alone. The air around Eleanor instantly chilled. For a brief second, the ghost of her past control tried to reassert itself. Julian managed a forced smile. "I heard the lecture. Building resilient structures. Very fitting, given what you've done with your life." He paused, his gaze lingering on Ethan, then on Clara. "I suppose I should congratulate you both. You've certainly maximized your brand." The old Julian, the one who saw everything as a transaction and a competition, was still there. Ethan stepped forward slightly, shifting Clara to his hip, his stance protective, yet calm. "Thank you, Julian. We prioritize integrity over optics. That's a good brand." Julian ignored Ethan, focusing on Eleanor. "I was just saying to my partners, it's a shame we couldn't have maintained the partnership. Imagine the power we could have commanded, with your vision and my capital. We could have owned this whole conference." Viewer question. If you were Eleanor, what one powerful, non-confrontational statement would you use to shut down Julian's attempt to claim her success? Chapter 16. The Shield of Joy. Eleanor took a deep breath. She didn't need anger. She didn't need to fight. She simply needed to state her reality. "Julian," Eleanor said, her voice clear and even. "You're still talking about commanding and owning. I'm talking about building and contributing. Those are two very different foundations." She walked closer to him, her eyes steady. "I have everything I need right here. I have a partner who is my equal, a daughter who knows her voice, and a business that reflects my ethics. You wanted a trophy. I wanted a legacy. I chose the latter, and I've never regretted the price." Clara, sensing the tension, chose that moment to act. She pointed at Julian's stiff, expensive tie. "Daddy, look!" Clara announced to Ethan. "That man's tie is too tight. He looks grumpy." The entire nearby group, including Chloe, who was biting back a laugh, turned to Julian. Julian's face went scarlet. The little girl, whom he had never met, had perfectly summarized his entire existence. Ethan chuckled softly, adjusting Clara on his hip. "She has an architect's eye for structural flaws, doesn't she?" Eleanor didn't offer sympathy. She offered finality. "Julian, enjoy the reception. We have a family dinner planned." She took Ethan's arm, gave Clara a kiss, and walked away. The incident was a powerful affirmation. Julian's judgment, once a source of terror, was now a minor, irrelevant detail in her thriving, complex life. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to see how Eleanor continues to mentor women in architecture. Final chapter. The Enduring Foundation. That evening, back in their cozy London flat, Eleanor, Ethan, and Clara were sprawled on the floor, reviewing sketches for Clara's future treehouse. "Mommy," Clara asked, pointing at a drawing, "why does this beam have to be so strong?" Eleanor smiled. "Because, sweetie, a good foundation needs to withstand everything. It needs to hold up the beautiful parts of the house, the roof, the windows, the light. And it needs to hold up the hard parts, the storms, the big snows." She looked at Ethan, then back at Clara. "We build our lives the same way. We build it with strong, true choices. So when something like Julian comes along, it doesn't knock us down. It just shows us how strong we already are." Eleanor Vance had achieved her ultimate success. Not only had she built a global architecture firm, but she had built a safe, joyful internal architecture for herself and her family. She had faced the ghost of her past and found that her present, filled with love and purpose, was an unbeatable structure. Thank you for following Eleanor's powerful journey. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the best foundation is built on love, not gold. Chapter 18. The Shared Spotlight. Like this video, if you believe a true partner celebrates your success without dimming their own light. Eleanor was accustomed to being the star. Her calendar was filled with international keynotes, and her name graced architecture magazine covers. But Ethan Cole, always the brilliant, quiet engineer, was about to step fully into the global spotlight. Ethan had led a revolutionary project, designing self-sufficient vertical urban farms powered entirely by renewable energy, and he had just been awarded the prestigious Pritzker Prize for Sustainable Engineering. It was the highest honor in his specialized field. The award gala was in Oslo, Norway. As they prepared, Eleanor felt an unexpected wave of anxiety. For 7 years with Julian, her role at such events was purely decorative, the wife. "Are you sure I should wear this?" Eleanor asked Ethan, looking at her simple, elegant dress. "It's your night. I don't want to accidentally overshadow you." Ethan stopped adjusting his tie and turned to her, his gaze warm and steady. "Eleanor, your light is the reason I shine so brightly. You don't overshadow me. You illuminate me. You're wearing that dress because you designed a brilliant life, and I want everyone to know the genius standing next to me. He understood her fear, the trauma of being told to be smaller. At the gala, Eleanor had to consciously navigate her new role. She was introduced repeatedly as Dr. Eleanor Vance, the visionary architect, and Ethan's wife. She made sure to share stories about Ethan's dedication, steering conversations back to his incredible achievements. Viewer question: if Julian were watching this, what do you think would confuse him the most about Ethan and Eleanor's dynamic? Their genuine mutual respect, the fact that Ethan isn't threatened by her fame, or their simple, affectionate interactions? Chapter 19. The new definition of support. Later, as Ethan prepared to give his acceptance speech, he turned to Eleanor backstage. His hand, usually so steady on a blueprint, trembled slightly. "You're amazing," he murmured, his nervousness exposed. Eleanor smiled, taking his hand. She didn't offer to rewrite his speech or give him a critique. The old controlling reflex was gone. Instead, she offered the simple, profound support Julian never could. "You earned this, Ethan. Every single hour, every brilliant solution. Go out there and own your success," she whispered. "I'm your structural support. I'm not going anywhere." Ethan walked onto the stage. His speech was powerful and humble, focusing entirely on the responsibility of engineers to build a better future. But his final acknowledgement brought Eleanor to tears. Finally, Ethan concluded, looking directly at Eleanor, "I must thank the woman who taught me the truest meaning of sustainability, my wife, Dr. Eleanor Vance." He paused, his voice ringing with conviction. "She built her life on her own foundation, and in doing so, she gave me the courage to build mine with integrity. My success is only meaningful because I share it with a true partner." The crowd erupted. Eleanor stood, not diminished, but magnified by his shared praise. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to see how Eleanor and Ethan collaborate on their next massive project. Final chapter. The fullest structure. Years later, Eleanor and Ethan's life was a beautifully intricate structure. Clara was now a vibrant child in middle school, already showing her mother's eye for design and her father's methodical thinking. The couple often traveled together, sometimes with Clara, leading projects that truly changed cities. One evening, Eleanor was reviewing an old photo, the one of her standing stiffly beside Julian at the New York Gala. She compared it to a recent photo, her, laughing, covered in mud on a construction site with Ethan, both wearing hard hats. She realized the profound lesson of their journey. Julian taught her that control Ethan taught her that partnership is a launch pad. She had spent years learning to be the architect of her own life. Now, she was learning the beautiful shared design of family. Eleanor closed the album, feeling complete. She had found a success that wasn't about outshining anyone, but about sharing the light. She had built a structure that was resilient, ethical, and most importantly, filled with love. Thank you for following Eleanor's powerful journey. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that finding the right partnership means doubling your light. Tuyệt vời! Tôi rất vui vì bạn vẫn muốn tiếp tục câu chuyện về Eleanor và Ethan. Phần tiếp theo này sẽ tập trung vào sự kiện. Một thử thách đối với sự bình đẳng trong công việc của họ. Khi một đối tác tiềm năng lớn muốn thuê chỉ một người và cách họ cùng nhau vượt qua nó để bảo vệ nguyên tắc của mình. Chapter 20. The Test of Equality. Like this video if you believe a true partnership means working together, or not at all. Eleanor and Ethan were at the pinnacle of their careers, recognized globally as the leading experts in ethical and resilient urban development. They were seen as a unit, a force multiplier. This status brought an unexpected test. They were approached by Omni Global Ventures, a colossal investment firm looking to build a massive, new tech city in the Middle East. The fee alone was astronomical, enough to secure their financial freedom for life. The meeting was held in their New York office. Mr. Sterling, The firm's cold, pragmatic CEO laid out the offer. "Dr. Vance, Mr. Cole," Sterling began, nodding toward Eleanor. "We've reviewed your portfolios. Your vision, Dr. Vance, is exactly what we need for the aesthetics and public relations. However," he paused, sliding a contract across the table, "our board feels that Mr. Cole's role is redundant. We want your name, Dr. Vance, as the lead architect and the face of the project. The contract is solely for you." The offer was designed to flatter Eleanor's ego while subtly sidelining Ethan. The pay offered to Eleanor alone was double what they normally charged as a firm. Eleanor felt the familiar, old pressure. It was the same choice Julian had implicitly demanded years ago. Choose ambition and individual glory over partnership and principle. She looked at the contract, then met Sterling's gaze. Ethan remained silent, his expression calm but attentive, waiting for her lead. Viewer question: if you were Ethan, facing the loss of a massive contract and a potential threat to your firm's principle of equality, how would you signal your support to Eleanor in that moment? Chapter 21. Non-negotiable foundations. Eleanor pushed the contract back across the table, maintaining eye contact with Mr. Sterling. "Mr. Sterling," Eleanor began, her voice even and powerful. "I appreciate the generous offer, but you fundamentally misunderstand the structure of our firm and our success." She gestured toward Ethan. "Mr. Cole is not redundant. He is the chief structural integrity officer of every project and every decision I make, professional and personal. There is no Vance without Cole, and there is no project of this magnitude that would succeed without his engineering genius and ethical oversight." Mr. Sterling smirked, clearly attempting to negotiate. "Surely, Dr. Vance, you understand the dynamics. Your name sells the vision. We can hire any competent engineer for the substructure." Ethan finally spoke, his voice quiet, cutting through Sterling's arrogance like steel through soft wood. "With all due respect, sir, you cannot. Our firm operates on the principle of inviolable partnership. Our success is based on the integration of ethical design and sustainable engineering, from concept to completion." He looked directly at Sterling. "The fee you offered Eleanor is immense, but the integrity we provide is non-negotiable. If you hire one of us, you hire both of us, under joint leadership, or you hire neither of us." Sterling, unused to being refused, especially over a matter of principle, frowned deeply. "I see. You are prioritizing sentiment over profit, a regrettable business decision." "We are prioritizing legacy over a quick return," Eleanor corrected. "And our legacy is built on treating every partner and every community with respect." "Good day, Mr. Sterling." She stood up, Ethan rising instantly beside her. They walked out, leaving the stunned CEO alone with the rejected contract. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to see how Eleanor and Ethan find an even better, more ethical project. Final chapter. The true cost of integrity. That evening, Eleanor and Ethan were having a rare, quiet dinner at home after putting Clara to bed. The financial cost of walking away from the Omni Global deal was staggering, but the emotional return was immediate and immense. "Did we do the right thing?" Eleanor asked, needing the verbal affirmation, even though her heart already knew the answer. Ethan reached across the table, taking her hand. "We did the only thing, Eleanor. You proved once again that the biggest threats to your success are not external rivals, but the internal temptation to compromise your truth." "Sterling tried to buy my isolation again," Eleanor mused. "He tried to put me back in the star position so I'd resent you for holding me back. And you chose us," Ethan finished, squeezing her hand. Eleanor smiled. She realized that her greatest victory was not winning the competition years ago. It was the fact that today, she didn't even have to debate the choice. Her foundation, built on honesty and partnership with Ethan, was so strong that the temptation simply couldn't crack it. They proved that true partnership isn't just about sharing success. It's about sharing the responsibility to walk away from anything that compromises your joint values. Thank you for following the journey of Eleanor and Ethan. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the best deals are always the ones that protect your integrity. Epilogue: The Enduring Legacy. Like this video, if you believe integrity is the most valuable asset you can own. 5 years after they walked away from the Omni Global deal, the Vance-Cole duo was busier, happier, and more fulfilled than ever. Their decision, though financially costly, had cemented their reputation as industry leaders who prioritized ethics over profit, attracting a caliber of clients who shared their vision. Their firm wasn't the largest, but it was the most respected. Their daughter, Clara, was now a sharp, curious young girl, growing up in a home where talent was celebrated and character was paramount. One day, Clara found an old magazine cutting while cleaning out her father's desk. It was a photo of Julian Blackwood, looking thin and stern, next to a headline about his latest acquisition. "Mommy," Clara asked, holding up the clipping, "who is this man? He looks like his suit is too tight." Eleanor smiled gently. "That is Julian Blackwood, sweetie. He used to be a very ambitious, very powerful man in the city." "Did you work with him?" Clara asked. "For a time," Eleanor replied, her voice steady. "He was a powerful architect of wealth, Clara. He built things that made money." "And what did you and Daddy build?" Eleanor took Clara's hand and led her to the massive window overlooking the vibrant, interconnected city they helped design. "We built things that made meaning," Eleanor explained. "We built communities where people could thrive. We built structures that would last long after the money was spent. And most importantly," she looked at Clara with deep love, "we built a home where everyone is seen, heard, and equally valued." The contrast was stark and final. Julian built a life of command and isolation. His legacy was measured in financial statements and lost relationships. Eleanor and Ethan built a life of collaboration and connection. Their legacy was measured in the resilience of communities and the happiness of their family. Eleanor Vance had achieved the ultimate victory. She had not only reclaimed her identity, but had redefined what true success looked like for her daughter. She taught Clara that the most powerful structure you could ever build was the foundation of your own character. The story of Eleanor Vance is the enduring proof that walking away from control, selfishness, and empty promises is not a sacrifice. It is the first courageous step toward building a life that is truly, beautifully yours. Thank you for following Eleanor's powerful journey. The story ends here, but the legacy of integrity continues.